Welcome back. We were talking earlier about small cap stocks. Well, with stock markets continuing to defy gravity, one ag tech business from across the Tasman sees now as a pretty good time to raise $8 million with a listing on the ASX next month. Born from a national research institute, CropLogic has developed technology that helps improve crop yields for farmers, working out what their water and nitrogen requirements will be, for example. All very important stuff if you're a farmer. Well, the company is looking to list here, but it's also got grand plans for the US too, and perhaps elsewhere. Jamie Cairns, Managing Director of CropLogic, is on the Sydney leg of the Investor Roadshow, and he joins me in the studio. Thank you for finding the time to do this. You must be pretty busy out there with your investors.
It's been a long week, and it's going to be another 2 long weeks as well. So.
Yeah, I can believe that. So just explain to me the technology, what exactly CropLogic can deliver for customers.
Okay, well, just going back to what you mentioned before about where the company actually came from right at the outset. Back in 2010, we were based on a nugget of IP which came out of the New Zealand Institute of Plant and Food Research. A lot of that research was around how plants grow, under what circumstances we can alter yield changes. Well, potatoes is the big one for us at the moment. So it's, our focus really has been on potatoes. For us, we find ourselves in a reasonably uncluttered market space dealing with potatoes, just because it's quite hard to walk into a crop and look at the crop and say, well, your yield's looking fantastic this year. Of course, it's all underground. So really, this is where the benefit of that 30 years of research with plant and food comes into the equation. And it literally is an equation. It's a bunch of algorithms there that we can actually start forecasting and modelling yield outcomes for decisions being made.
But you have the technology in field, presumably, to get the data.
We do. We do. We've got that's the delivery part of it, I guess. We're deploying some field probes out there. Those probes will measure things like soil moisture, soil temperature, environmental factors as well.
So what sort of studies have you done to demonstrate that this thing works?
Yeah, well, again, because of that 30 years of research back in plant and food, we can say, okay, well, under these circumstances, if we're going to change this particular input for that potato plant, then there's going to be a yield impact at the other end of it. 30 years is a long time. Subsequently, after that, after the 2010 spin-out of CropLogic, we've also done about 600 trials around the world, mainly in the US market, in China, New Zealand and Australia as well.
And they've gone pretty well?
They've gone pretty well, yeah.
So, so you're over here to list in Australia. You're not listing in New Zealand. Now, why is that?
Yeah, I get this quite often as a New Zealand company too. Look, the NZX requirement, there's a market cap requirement of 50 million up there. In fact, it is 50 million.
Well, even though presumably the size of the capital market in New Zealand is substantially smaller than Australia.
It is. It is. Look,
that's a bit weird.
It is. There's an alternative board as well, but the NXT, but it's reasonably in its infancy. The number of other companies listed on the NXT just didn't appeal to us. I think there's about another 4 at the time. So it's not us turning our back on the New Zealand capital market, definitely not. It's just that at the moment, in the state that it is right now, the ASX made more sense for us.
Okay. Equally, I used to be on the board of the CRC for irrigation futures here, and there were a few companies, sorry, perhaps not companies, but certainly research projects that were right in your space. I don't know now that there are the same companies and the same commercialisation. What has allowed you to take that commercialised step?
Well, there's a couple of elements to that. There are other companies that put probes in field, but we've got the modelling as well. So instead of this point-in-time fix-up of your field's too dry, you need to water it or whatever, we're able to look forward, and because we're also...
predictive.
It is predictive, but it's also taking into account more the demands of the plants. So if you have a look at some of those other competitors out there, it's really just an approach to keeping soil moist.
Now, of course, a lot of potatoes in Tasmania.
There are, and we've been trialling down in Tasmania for a number of years, actually,
Yeah, and China is another area that you are looking at. And is that in potatoes or in other crops?
Well, look, potatoes, again, just because the amount of work we've done up there in the Pacific Northwest of the US, it's a great position for us to be able to use that technology, use what we've learnt up there to push out into other markets. And just to give you an idea of the scale of the market there, Australia is an order of magnitude bigger than New Zealand, US order of magnitude bigger than Australia, and then China again on the size of the US.
You think of rice, of course, in China, but presumably there's an awful lot of potatoes.
Correct. And I think the Chinese government have identified potatoes as being one of their top 4 strategic value crops.
I think you're right there, yeah. So what are your investors, I mean, you've gone on this investor roadshow, what's the feedback you're getting?
Oh, it's been very positive. We've started off over there in New Zealand, and you know, good feedback from the funds. We've had some commitments, early commitments already.
Yeah. Do they like the ag tech sector over there?
They do like the ag tech sector, but I think you mentioned before, you know, commercialising technology in the ag sector is quite difficult. So for us to be sitting here now and saying that we've got 60,000 acres under management right now up there in the Pacific Northwest, it's really the, I guess, the evidence that we are able to commercialise that technology.
You've also done a lot, as you said, in the US. What exactly have you got there?
Well, now we've got 16 staff up there in the US. We've got, like I say, 60,000 acres under management,
yes.
About 2.4 million revenue coming out of the US.
Agronomy services company. It's a traditional agronomy services firm, and now we're looking to push that technology in to rationalise that business model, make it far more profitable, and then to able to service a number more.
So that then services a whole lot of farms in a particular area?
That's right, yeah. So it's operating out of Washington State at the moment. Washington State's a great one for us for potatoes. I mean, everybody thinks about Idaho as being the potato state.
Yeah.
But actually the yield per acre in Washington is higher than that in Idaho. So great referenceability across the rest of the US and further out internationally.
You had
as well.
a pre-float raising of a couple of million, I think.
Correct, yeah.
And that went reasonably well. You want
It went very swiftly, yeah.
8 now, and then what are you going to do with that money?
Well, of the 8, 3 million is going to be spent on market development, and obviously on market development,
yes.
And half of that is going to be spent up there in the US market. We've made this acquisition up there. We've got a big investment in the US market. We really want to capitalise upon that.
Yes.
You mentioned China before. We're not expecting to see revenues out of China in the next 2 years, but there's still a plan, a longer-term plan to get there. So that's what the rest of it's going to be used for, international development.
And presumably you've got prospectus forecasts in the prospectus?
We have not got forecasts in the prospectus. Because of the early stage of the company and certainly the early stage of those revenues, it was we're not able to represent those forecasts in there. But certainly in terms of the last 3 years of audited results, particularly taking into account the American operations, that's definitely all there.
And at what stage might you come back? I mean, if this is successful, when would you come back and tap the market again?
Well, look, our market entry strategy is based around acquisition. We can say right now what we paid for that US organisation up there. It just gave us immediate access to those 60,000 acres. It took us right the way through to commercialisation just in one single transaction. So we're going to do that as the basis of entry into new geographic areas as well. We've got potential opportunities in Idaho. We've got potential opportunities here in Australia as well.
And what about you and your personal background? And how has your background helped, what you're doing now?
Well, look, my background, I grew up on dairy farms in the lower central North Island of New Zealand.
Right.
So it was basically right the way through until I left and went to university that I was living on a farm, basically. So that's given me that grounding, I guess, in the agricultural sector. And other than that, my background has been in IT and telco space. Headed up a company over there in New Zealand, went through the whole M&A type strategy with those companies.
But you've done the tech side as well. So
we've done the tech, and this really is just a return to roots for me with an amalgamation of where I'm from and what I love doing.
Jamie Cairns, wish you very good luck with it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.